Welcome to this week's Q&A. We've got some wonderful questions. The main question is on buttermilk and whether they drank it in the 18th century. Thanks for joining us today on Questions and Answers. The first question comes from Monday's video on the fried oysters. The question is, did you really like the oysters? I couldn't tell for sure. I really liked the oysters. Kevin, you tried them, right?
Oh, yeah. They were delicious. Now, I like oysters, period. I like raw oysters, but...
They're disgusting, raw oysters.
No, they're not.
But the fried oysters, because they're all covered up and, you fry them in butter. They were wonderful. They were wonderful.
And I think frying them in butter really helped, too. I mean, they were really good. I was surprised.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with frying it in butter. The next question comes in on the forced cabbage pudding that we did many seasons ago. But it has to do with suet, and we use suet a lot, so it's a good question. How would I get shredded suet? And then he says, I bought a jar of suet from James Townsend and Son. Okay, so he got one of these jars of suet, and the trick is...
It's good stuff, by the way.
It's excellent stuff. Unfortunately, the packaging is not the best, but it turns out, he wants to see it. But it turns out that they have to package it in this way because...
FDA ruling, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So they're, like, you got to package it in a glass jar, and you have to, unfortunately, the glass jar is not the best. Really, this could just be served up in a block with paper wrapped around it. It would be much easier to use, but we have to put up with this kind of packaging because of rules.
Yeah.
So the deal is that to use this in a shredded form, what you need to do is scoop this out with a spoon. It gets really tough. It's like wax. Scoop it out with a spoon. Doesn't matter whether it breaks up some. Then you can chop it up with a knife and get it into little pebble shapes, sort of like a grain of wheat sized little pieces of suet to use in all these different recipes. It basically uses it in the same way.
Yeah. And John, this is really good stuff. This has been rendered perfectly.
Right.
And the shelf life is a long time. I would like to say indefinite, but you can't say
rules,
things like that. So, but it'll last a long time.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. I've got two questions here. I'm going to run these guys together because they are kind of similar. One of them has to do specifically with the Samuel Larkin video that Kevin was in.
Aye.
These are both getting started kind of questions. So we've had, this whole month has been getting started. We've had a lot of videos on that and a lot of interaction with that. Wonderful. Here's this question. What kind of hints or tips would you give a Southern gent like myself when it comes to becoming a character? I mean, I can be myself quite easily, but I'm not sure if that's how a man from the South would speak or act in the 18th century. And I would love to hear your opinion on this matter. And then this next one, we'll run these together. This one is on the Samuel Larkin one, and it says, I don't understand the negative comments. So would he be required to have a perfect accent to participate?
Okay, I wanted to say this for a long time. When I developed Samuel Larkin, I knew that the accent that I was adopting was kind of a generic accent, that accents that you find in Ireland today are a lot
varied.
more varied and complex and regional, and so I understand that. I wanted something...
Well, they're also modern accents.
Yes.
Those have been developed over time. We're not sure what an Irish accent exactly would be like 200 years ago. So there's that added on to the complexity of this kind of situation. That goes back to the other gentleman's question about what would a man in the South sound like? Right.
Yeah. And it's a very good question, and unfortunately, no one knows for sure. I mean, there are people who have studied this, and but the conclusions are really speculations because there are no audio recordings of people speaking in the 18th century.
And although our Southern accents today, depending on the region where you're at in the South, are very developed accents, they wouldn't have been like that 200 years ago at all. Right. Or maybe one would, but the other ones would all be different. These are all developed, and they've all evolved. So you're not going to be perfect with your accent. And this person's question about being a perfect accent, well, the question is, do you need to be perfect in anything?
Ooh, I'm in trouble. Yeah.
You can't be perfect. No one is perfect at what they're doing, whether it's their accent or their clothing or anything else. We are all in a process of becoming. Okay? No one is perfect. We are all trying to be better. And it's interesting. There's always a place for new people. You don't have to be fully developed to participate. And if you connect with the right group, you don't have to know anything to get started. I mean, you can walk into the event and say, boy, I'm really interested in this. I'd like to get started. And they say, well, there's a box over there with a bunch of clothing. Put it on and let's start doing it. And sometimes you can find a group like that to work with. So you don't actually need to have anything but your interest. That's it. Mm-hmm. So no, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have a perfect accent. The Southern person, what would the right acting be? Like he's asking what kind of personality he should have, I guess. Everyone's different.
Right.
So if you can find rude people or kind people in any one of these situations. So that's a choice that you just have to make.
Yeah, and if you're interested in embarking on living history or going deeper, don't let that keep you from doing it.
Yeah.
So.
And here's the main question. It's on the butter episode. That was an amazing episode. Okay, I have a serious question now instead of my usual comment. So apparently
who is that?
his usual
Okay,
comments.
yeah.
I don't recognize the name. You drank the buttermilk after the butter was made and commented that it tastes like skim milk. Was that what people usually had when they drank milk in the 18th century because the butter was extracted first? What would you say?
I would say oftentimes yes, but they didn't drink that exclusively.
No.
That butter or cream, milk was consumed as well.
Right.
And in fact, there are even other byproducts from dairy. I'm thinking of whey in the cheese episode from Genesee Country Village. Mm-hmm. Even whey was used medicinally. They also fed their hogs with it, but it was consumed. Yeah.
Right, so there's no reason to say that they would always have done that. But if you had an active butter operation going on in your household, it is very, very likely that buttermilk would have been used. There was no reason to throw that buttermilk out.
Right.
So
now let's remind some of the viewers, they may not have watched that dairy episode. When we're talking about buttermilk, we're not talking about the thick, cultured buttermilk that we have today. That's actually had a culture that's used in cheese production, added to it, and it thickens the milk up. This is the leftover the byproduct from making butter. So you get all of those dairy fats and solids extracted from the milk, and you're left with something that tastes very much like skim milk.
And we didn't even touch on it in the episode, and we haven't even talked about this before, but I imagine that modern buttermilk is an emulation of what happens when you take that natural buttermilk like we had, but you let it age. You let it specifically do this buttermilk thing, right?
Yeah.
Because it's already got those natural enzymes in it and bacteria and whatever that culture that turns into buttermilk. Of course, you can't do that with modern milk today because it's been pasteurized and homogenized, and so it doesn't make butter the same way, and that milk that you get left over will not culture unless you add the culture to it. And that's what they have to do with modern buttermilk.
Right.
So I want to mention two things. Number one, thank you for the answers, the comments, the suggestions on last week's Q&A where I asked about how to make both the channel and other videos better. We got so much encouraging comments and also some very, very good suggestions. So thank you for those. Also, all the amazing comments that came in on the Brenda Parker episode. Oh, yeah. And Brenda has been down in the comments section answering some of those. So thank you, Brenda, for answering those. And whenever we have a guest, it's always nice when they kind of interact there in the comment section and answer some of those questions when I can't answer them for Brenda. So. And I thank you for your support with the T-shirt thing. They are in process right now, And we actually did those in 2 batches. So hopefully in the next week to 10 days, we might send out the first batch. So if you ordered early, hopefully you'll see those. And of course, the other ones are in process. So we're working on those t-shirts.
Yeah. Hey, and by the time you see this video, Ryan and I are going to be on the road on our way to Fort Frederick. If you're at Fort Frederick, look us up.
Maryland.
And say hi. Yes. We're really looking forward to that. We're going to be there Friday and Saturday. We're not going to be there Sunday, but
right. And they'll just be wandering around.
Right.
But he'll probably be dressed something like this.
You might see Samuel Larkin.
Oh boy.
I'm trying to decide.
Yeah, it's hard to say who you're going to find when you go there, but look them up. Maybe you can ask around. If you see guys with cameras, maybe it'll be them. Thank you so much for your wonderful comments, your very, very kind encouragement, and your amazing support, whether it's going to our website and buying regular products like everything you see around us here, or clothing, or if you purchased a t-shirts, thank you for your support. And we got some amazing supporters on Patreon. Again, thank you for that. And hey, thanks for watching today.